Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. So this is going to be a video review of If Beale Street Could Talk. I also did a written review that went up last week on Riot Material. It's my first essay of the new year, so I'm really excited about it. There will be a link in the description box as well as a pinned comment if you guys want to check that out and read it. This review is not going to be in standard good, the bad, and the ugly format because there was no bad and there was no ugly in this film, in my opinion. I really feel like, let me start by saying this is a film by Barry Jenkins. His last film, Moonlight, won Best Picture at the Oscars, even though you guys know I don't give a fuck about Oscars. But it's like that film got all this acclaim for like how it was such a great movie and it was so amazing, it was so wonderful. And I did like Moonlight, but like personally, I feel like If Beale Street Could Talk is a better movie than Moonlight. So like that is how good this movie is. Like a movie that won like a Best Picture Oscar, I feel like this movie's even better. And again, in terms of awards, everyone knows I don't give a fuck about awards. I have a ton of videos on how I feel like awards and award systems and award shows are outdated. They tend to be racist, they tend to be classist, they tend to be sexist, very hegemonic. You already know like what's gonna get nominated, what's sort of like Oscar bait and stuff like that. And this movie was actually super snubbed at the Oscars this year, which does not surprise me because of the subject matter of this film, which is about one of the overarching, I never know how to pronounce that, themes of this movie is talking about the justice system and the prison system and mass incarceration of Black Americans, and that's not something that people want to see. That's not something that people want to talk about. There are going to be spoilers. Okay, spoilers. This movie also doesn't have a happy ending, which I know bothered a lot of people because people felt like the movie was kind of marketed, and I don't know, maybe the marketing could have been better. I don't know. People feel like the movie was marketed as this sort of feel-good holiday film love story, and then they went and saw the film, and the film is about a young Black man that's wrongfully incarcerated after he is falsely accused of rape, and his pregnant fiance and her family that is like doing everything they can to get him out of prison. And like that's what the movie is about. So I think a lot of people went into it feeling like it was going to be like a feel-good love story, and the tagline of the movie is like trust love all the way, and it's very beautiful. Like it's a beautifully shot film. Everybody knows I am a sucker for good cinematography, and the cinematography is really beautiful. The film is shot in these the colors are muted. They're not like bright popping out, but a lot of like really warm earth tones, a lot of golds, a lot of really deep yellows and oranges and burgundies. The film is set in the early 70s, shortly after the end of the Civil Rights Movement. And there's still a lot of semi-legalized, racism. And the story follows Fonnie and Tish. Fonnie's the man and Tish is the woman. As they sort of, it's non-linear. So when the movie starts, Fonnie's already been arrested. He's already in jail. And then the movie sort of unfolds in this non-linear narrative, and you learn how he ended up in jail, what happened, and how his friends and family and Tish, who's pregnant with his child, are dealing with it, how they're dealing with it and what they're doing and how it's happening. And so, but it's like very beautifully shot. Like, I think a lot of people didn't really know what to do with this movie, how to feel about the movie, because it's like a beautifully shot movie. It's gorgeously rendered. You know, we see these scenes, and since it's in a non-linear narrative, we see these scenes of Fonnie and Tish falling in love. They were childhood best friends who basically grew up together. Their fathers are best friends. And so they were childhood best friends that sort of fell in love over time as they grew up and grew into young adults. And so we see them falling in love, and it's so pretty to look at. It's very pretty to watch. We see them, walking. It's set in New York, in Harlem. We see them like walking the streets of Harlem, and they're holding hands, and they have on these like gorgeous clothes. You guys also know I'm a sucker for some great 70s fashion. So they have on these like beautiful clothes, and Tish has this natural hair, this like afro, And, you know, Fonny is an artist. He was a woodworker. He was learning a trade, but it was like horrible working conditions. And the guy that was like running it, the journeyman, was like super racist. And so Fonny and one of the other coworkers ended up like stealing a bunch of the tools and like getting the fuck up out of there to go do art. And Fonny's like a brilliant artist. He's very sensitive. He's very smart. He's like just a lovely, lovely, lovely character. And as is Tish, she's very warm and loving and very innocent. We see Tish's parents. Her mother is played by, I always say the wrong name, so make sure, Regina King. I always say Regina Hall when I mean Regina King, and I know the difference. I just always do that. Her mother's played by Regina King, and her father is played by, I have the cast up, by Coleman Domingo, and they're portrayed as being like very deeply in love. She has a sister that's played by Tiana Parrish, and they're just very in love, and they have this very close, tight-knit family, this nuclear family with her mother and her father and her and her sister. Like when she tells them that she's pregnant, you know, they break out the whiskey and they're like, oh, we're gonna like take shots, you know, they're gonna do salutations, right? Salutations to welcome the baby. And they, you know, play music and they basically have a party. And we see how like her parents, in my review that I wrote, I said that like the theme of the movie is love. I think it's not in the way that people were expecting going to see the movie. Again, they thought it was going to be some type of like romantic, you know, holiday love story that they could walk away from feeling good. And it's not that motherfucking kind of party. Like, the theme of the movie is love. Like, the love that Fonny and Tish have for each other, that even though he's been wrongfully incarcerated, Tish is totally 100% dedicated to him, to their relationship, to their unborn child, and to doing whatever is necessary to get him out. Her parents love each other, and they love her, and they love Fonny, so they are also 100% dedicated. Her sister that loves her and loves Fonny is also 100% dedicated. You know, all these, they're friends and family that love them very much, and like Fonny, for example, is like a starving artist, so he has like friends that like feed him and Tish, you know, they work in restaurants and stuff like that, you know, they're dedicated. So it's just about how you have this network of love and these ties, and how strong the love is that bonds these people that are thrown into this really tragic situation because they are Black Americans, right? Specifically, like, because racism in this country puts them in this situation, and how they basically use the love that they have, you know, for each other and for themselves as a way to sort of keep going and keep fighting against it, which I also thought was a really, really, really powerful message. The movie is based off a book by James Baldwin, a brilliant, brilliant book. The book was also a fucking flop when it came out. People did not like it. And spoiler, and I'm going to say that I think a lot of why people didn't like, you know, they don't like this type of thing is because, like, at the end of the film, Fonny does not get released from jail. He does not get released from prison. He's completely wrongfully incarcerated. He ends up having to take a plea deal and plead guilty, even though we know for a fact that he's not. So he can get a reduced sentence that he still has to finish out. And so at the end of the movie, we see Tish, who's taking their child that has now been born, to go visit him in prison. And, like, that's how the movie ends. And I know that was an unsettling ending for people that thought he was going to get out, but, like, that's real. That's life. Like, that's realistic. Like, that is the life as a Black American in this country, as a descendant of American chattel slavery. And another reason why I feel like the book and the movie, especially the movie, and especially right now in this sort of political climate, I think makes people uncomfortable is because, as I said previously, what happened to Fonny is he's falsely accused of rape. We know for a fact that he didn't do it. We, the audience, we know for a fact that he didn't do it because we see that while the rape is taking place, he's having dinner with Tish and his really good friend David, who's played by Brian Tyree Henry from Atlanta. We see them having dinner. We know for a fact that he didn't do it. And then we see what ended up happening of how he got set up to take the fall for this rape. He actually gets into an altercation with a racist as fuck white police officer because this another racist ass white man. It's just racist white people everywhere. There's no white savior in this movie. There's no type of white savior trope. Like, no, there's none of that in this movie, which I think also makes people uncomfortable. Tish is in a grocery store. This white man is like sexually harassing her in like a very overtly racist manner. Fonnie defends her, and this racist white cop tries to arrest Fonnie for defending her, right? And then what ends up happening is they, like, all the people that are in the store end up saying, like, no, like, he didn't do anything wrong, like, you're not gonna, like, arrest him, da-da-da-da-da. And the cop gets a grudge against Fonnie, and so after this woman gets raped, he arrests Fonnie for it, and he tells the girl, pick him. And the girl is a non-black person of color, woman of color, a Puerto Rican, Latinx chick that's also fucking racist, that picks Fonnie out of the lineup. And then she fucking goes back home to Puerto Rico, and Regina King, as Tisha's mom, she goes to Puerto Rico to try to convince her to come back and testify and admit that she lied, that like she was told to pick him and she picked him, and the woman won't come back and she won't testify. And her family, the way they kind of go about it is they kind of like imply that her family, the girl Victoria, that her Puerto Rican family is racist, that they're like some anti-black racists, because Regina King's race is like mentioned specifically when she's talking to Victoria's father. Her father says something like, oh, like, you a Negro woman that came all this way for nothing, because she like goes all the way to Puerto Rico to try to like get her to come back. And like that's even a part of like, they have to do everything themselves. Like, after the girl Victoria, like, goes back to Puerto Rico, they're just like, oh, like, the judiciary system, the cops, and the legal system are just like, oh, there's nothing we could do. Like, she went to Puerto Rico. We can't extradite her. We don't have the money. We don't have the manpower. Like, that's it. Like, stamp it. Fonnie's guilty. Like, put him in jail. So they have to come up with the money themselves to send Regina King's mom to Puerto Rico to try to find the girl herself and bring her back herself. They can't get a lawyer. So they have to, like, come up with the money to hire, like, an up-and-coming, like, lawyer that is, like, just starting out. And it's somebody that Tish's sister knows personally. Like, everything that they do trying to get Fonnie out, they have to do it themselves. They have to fund it themselves. Nobody helps them. They're fighting because, again, of, like, the love that they feel. And they know, like, we have to do it. Like, no matter what happens, like, if we have to, like, no matter what, we have to do it. And it's just like, I feel like that type of thing makes people really uncomfortable, and it makes them uncomfortable seeing like the depths of the way that like descendants of American chattel slavery are discriminated against, even by non-black persons of color, which we keep talking about. Something that I remember thinking while watching this movie is like, is that a whole conspiracy against like native-born blacks in this country? It's a fucking conspiracy. Like, it's a conspiracy against us. Like, at every level of life, judicial, government, like legal system, school system, like education, economics, working, jobs, at every level, there is literally systemic racism and disenfranchisement against us specifically, very specifically, like us super specifically. And it's just really, really, it was amazing to me that that was not shied away from, that we see, because this chick, Victoria, is a Puerto Rican immigrant. Like, she comes here, she marries this white guy, like, they pop out a couple of kids, he leaves her, she gets raped. She really does get raped. They don't leave it ambiguous about if she got raped or not. Like, she did get raped, but Fonnie didn't rape her. She accuses him just because it's just like, oh, it's just some black guy, whatever, I don't care. So she accuses him, and then like this racist white police officer has a grudge against him. So it's like everything is orchestrated like perfectly. It plays out as if the shit is like preordained, and it is preordained. And this is also the beauty of Baldwin's works. Kiki Lane's next role is going to be in Native Son, which is not by Baldwin, but is a similar kind of novel. And Ashton Sanders is going to be the main character. Ashton Sanders was in Moonlight. I don't think Barry Jenkins, is he directing Native Son? I don't know, I'll have to look up and see who the director is, but Ashton Sanders, who was Little in Moonlight, is going to be the main character, Bigger Thomas, in the movie adaptation they're making of Native Son, and Kiki Lane is going to be in that as well as his girlfriend Bessie. But like Native Son, the book, and I'm sure the movie, follows a sort of the similar idea of that descendants of American chattel slavery, Native blacks, Native sons and daughters, of this country are placed in in a certain position on the bottom of the social, economic, racial hierarchy, that things inevitably play out a certain way for us. And if they don't play out that way for you, you're basically the exception, because the system is designed to keep you at the bottom as a descendant of American chattel slavery. It's very true. It's very real. And these films coming out that highlight that, but not in a way that they're torture porn of showing people getting beat down, because that's really not what this movie is. It's a movie about people that love themselves and love each other and keep their fucking heads up in the face of this racist adversity, right? This trend of films, I want to see more of this, especially with these DACS casts. I want to see more of it. Like, especially right now in this time when everybody's trying to make it like POC power, we're all together, we're all together. Here you have this movie, and especially in the era of like hashtag Me Too, hashtag Me Too. One thing that I've always noticed when we talk about like hashtag Me Too and like sexual assault and rape culture, nobody ever wants to talk about the history of false rape accusations against Black men. Nobody. The false rape accusations against Black men by non-Black women. Nobody ever wants to talk about that, ever. The fact that a false rape allegation has historically been used as a way to keep Black American men in line, to keep them in check, to use as evidence for lynching, to use as evidence to put Black men in jail and in prisons, to use as evidence to murder and kill them. Even when Dylann Roof did the massacre in Charleston, in his manifesto, he wrote in his manifesto, they're raping our women and they have to go. Sexual violence, and we also want to talk about the flip side of that, which is Black women that are raped by white men, that are sexually harassed and sexually assaulted by white men. Lena Dunham, who's a fucking pig, who's always talking about support women, support women, support women, support women. When that Black girl came out saying that Lena Dunham's white male friend, writer, sexually harassed her, she called that Black girl a liar. Right? So we talk all this about hashtag Me Too and about rape culture and about sexual harassment, but we don't talk about the fact that there's a different standard for Black Americans, that going back to American chattel slavery, we've been demonized, we've been pathologized, we've been called sexual deviants, we've been even going back to like Sarah Bartman, you know, we've been stripped naked, our bodies put on display, treated as breeders, you know, all these things. And especially the false allegation of rape against Black men to be used as a way to incarcerate, criminalize, lynch, and murder them, right? That's not something people want to talk about. That's not something anybody wants to talk about when we're talking about hashtag Me Too and when we're talking about rape culture and when we're talking about sexual abuse and sexual harassment, right? Again, Lena Dunham, pig ass, sat next to Odell, and I did a video on this, sat next to Odell Beckham at that dinner, named him, wrote a whole essay naming and shaming him about not talking to her like she had some type of entitlement to his Black male body, right? Ownership, again, right? Going back to slavery. And this is not something that is strictly relegated to white people either, because as we've been talking about, non-Black persons of color can and do partake in anti-Black racism, right? They benefit from the system of white supremacy. They practice anti-Black racism. They utilize it against us. They weaponize it against us. And that's something we see on display in this movie. We see the system of racism, white supremacy, and the way that it sort of like captures Fani and this non-Black woman of color, Victoria, who's Puerto Rican, and her family that are also anti-Black racists. They willingly participate in this system, right? She picks Fani. She knows he didn't rape her. She picks him anyway because he's Black. Because they said, just pick that Black guy right there. Who cares? And she did it. Regina King goes to Puerto Rico, says he didn't do it. We know for a fact that he didn't do it. And she knows he didn't do it. You a Negro woman that came all this way for nothing. That's not something people want to talk about. That makes people very uncomfortable to talk about. And I like that the movie really didn't shy away from that. And I also go more in depth in my, again, in my written review. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful movie. It was well shot. Barry Jenkins has these sort of signature shots where he has his main characters look directly in the camera. It was utilized a lot in Moonlight. It was utilized a lot here. There's a scene where Regina King is taking her makeup off and taking her wig off, and she's looking right in the camera. It's really brilliantly done. Kiki Lane, who's a newcomer, she's 19, I believe. This was her first movie. Her real name's Keandra Lane. She's a DACS from Cincinnati. Just brilliant, just luminescent as Tish. Really a star-making turn completely. One of the best jobs I've seen this whole year, well, last year in a movie. She was amazing. The entire cast, with the exception of Fonny, who's played by, I want to say Stephen James. The entire rest of the cast is descendants of American chattel slavery. Regina King, Kiki Lane, Brian Tyree Henry, Tiana Paris. And I like that they are using dark-skinned DACS, dark-skinned Black Americans, because as we've talked about before, people like to pretend that we don't exist. Like, if you want to cast dark-skinned Black people in your movies, you have to use foreign Blacks. This whole cast, with the exception of Fonny, who's Canadian, he's Canadian, so he's at least from the continent, the continent of North America. The entire cast is descendants of American chattel slavery, and I do think that there's, to me, it felt very authentic. Like, the dialogue is really, really good. It felt like these are Black Americans. This is how we talk. This is how we act. This is how we dance. This is how we move. These are things that we would say and do. There's some other really interesting stuff about how, getting back to the issue of colorism, Fonny's mom and his two older sisters are like light skinned and like snooty and stuck up and uppity, and they don't like Tish. They feel like she's like common and low class, like she's like poor and dark skinned, and they don't like her. They look down their noses on her. That dynamic I thought was really interesting to see, and really interesting to kind of see fleshed out in a film. The music was really great. I believe it had an original score. There's lots of like really great swelling strings when we see, again, like Fonny and Tish and the way that they fall in love, and then some much more dramatic kind of lows and use of like deeper bass instruments when we see the bad things happening. And again, I feel like since it's a non-linear narrative, that was probably jarring for people, the intercut of like happiness and like sadness. But that's life. I also feel like that's life as well. Like, life does not have happy endings. Life is not just like a nice linear, everything's great and wonderful. Like, we see them being happy, and then we see Fonny in prison, and we know he didn't do it, and we know he's been wrongfully incarcerated, and we see as the movie plays out that he did nothing wrong, that he was targeted by a racist white supremacist system, specifically because he was a Black American male. He was wrongfully locked up. And even at the end of the movie, they have this like a montage of like real life images of Black Americans in prison, going all the way back to like chain gangs, like, and then like leading up to today, and talking about how the system of mass incarceration is used as a new form of slavery. For anyone that hasn't read The New Jim Crow, which is a book by Michelle Alexander, or even you can find various essays about it floating around that talks specifically about the use of mass incarceration, the war on drugs, the war on poverty, how these are wars on Black Americans, and ways to keep us in check once American chattel slavery ended, sort of keep us in our place. And there's a lot of that is discussed in this movie. But it's a beautiful movie. It's a lovely film. Again, I feel like it's a movie about love. It is a love story. And it is a movie about love between lovers, between family and friends, between siblings. We see, Tish and her sister, I can't think of her name right now, I keep wanting to say Tiana Paris, but we see like Tish and her sister being like support systems. We see like Tish's father being like a support system for her because she's pregnant, and like and Fonny's in jail. Like, we even see how mass incarceration is used as a tool to take Black men out of our communities and keep them away from their families. And we even see how it's like a perpetuated cycle, because, for example, they don't have the money to hire lawyers and pay for extradition and pay for all this stuff, because we have a for-profit justice system. Everything costs money, right? Bail costs money, and commissary costs money, and all the lawyers cost money, all these things. So we even see how, like, in their efforts to get Fonny out, Tish's father and Fonny's father, who I've said are best friends, they're poor. Like, they're poor Black Americans. They don't have any money. They're poor because of systemic racism and discrimination in the first place, right? we see how they resort to stealing things off the docks in New York and selling them on the black market to come up with the money for the legal fees. So now that's a cycle right there, because if they get caught, what's going to happen? They're going to go to jail, right? So we even see how like mass incarceration in the prison system puts black Americans in these positions, because people love to talk about crime, and crime in our neighborhoods and drugs and this and that. And it's like we're even put in these positions from jump because we're systemically disenfranchised and discriminated against, that so often leave it so that we don't even have no choice except to turn to certain things to get what we need. And then it's a war on us, so they lock us up, right? And even if we're not doing anything wrong, Fani wasn't doing anything wrong. It's made very clear that Fani wasn't doing anything wrong. They still can lock us up. They still can kill us. They still can leave us laying in the street for 4 hours if they want. They still could shoot us in the back. We could be wrongfully imprisoned like Kalief Browder, right? I did a video on Kalief Browder for anybody that missed it. 16 years old, wrongfully arrested for stealing a backpack. There was no proof. Locked him up in Rikers, left him there for 3 years waiting for trial. His family couldn't afford bail to get him out. He finally got let out. He couldn't deal with what happened to him. He committed suicide. He killed himself. That type of thing happens to us every day, right? And that was not shied away from in James Baldwin's book, If Beale Street Could Talk, and it is not shied away from in this movie. But again, I do want to say that it ultimately is a movie about love. Like, somebody left a comment that was like, I don't like seeing these types of movies because it just makes me feel bad. And it's just like how bad things are. And it's like, no, it's still a movie about love. Now, it is love against a backdrop of horror and racism and poverty. But it is still a beautiful movie about love and about the way that we love each other as Black Americans and what we'll do for each other, and how we are family and how we will do whatever it takes to support each other. And that was very beautiful to see. It was beautiful to see this family. It was beautiful to see this relationship between this Black man and this Black woman. You know, like I said, they both, I know you guys talk a lot about like, well, we want to see like dark skin representation. Like, did you guys go see this movie? Because this was dark skin representation without some fake ass motherfucking foreign Black in the role too. Like, the love scenes are amazing. They're wonderful. They're beautiful. Like, we see Daniel, Brian Tyree Henry, talking with Fani, and we even see this sort of platonic love between these two male friends, you know, talking. Daniel, Brian Tyree Henry, talks about being wrongfully incarcerated. He was arrested for stealing a car. He's like, I don't even have a license. I don't even know how to drive. They picked me up just because they could, right? Just because they could, because I'm Black and they could. They can get away with it. And we see them discuss it. And we even see Fani being sort of like a shoulder for him to lean on. And those type of bonds, I mean, I guess you could say the bad and the ugly is like some of the subject matter, but not the film itself. Those bonds are important, and I think it's important to see that type of representation up on screen. And it was just a lovely, a really beautiful film. A really beautiful film. I have not read the book, but I'm going to read the book. And I highly recommend watching this movie. It was like out so quick. I don't even know if you can still catch it. But if you can, or if you like, you know, you can see it somewhere else, please watch it, DVD, or I don't know, do DVDs still come out? Or, you know, whenever it's available, or if you can still catch it in the theater, I would highly recommend watching it, because I think it's a super important movie to see, and a beautiful movie. Like I said, they resist a white savior trope. They show a loving Black family. They show a loving Black couple. The leads are descendants of American chattel slavery for the most part. There is representation of all different skin tones in this film. There's a lot of explaining the why behind actions that people take. And there is, and just again, Kiki Lane is like a tour de force. Like, she's brilliant as just someone that's like in this situation, but she's like determined to like do whatever it takes. And she has this support system of her friends and family, as well as this like deep love that she feels for Fani, and he loves her back. And not shying away again from the fact that non-Black persons of color are also implicit and complicit in enacting, you know, anti-Black racism against Black Americans, and that they benefit from the system and that they do it as well. Talking about how rape is weaponized as a tool against Black Americans that nobody wants to talk about. It was excellent. Highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it yet again. Please read my review if you haven't read it, and let me know if you guys saw it or what you think. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Don't be leaving no comments about this is a ugly narrative or something, because I'm going to delete them. Seriously. See y'all next time. Peace.